I'd say if you look at your phone, I'd say the first 9 little icons are probably just wrappers for AI at this point. The stuff you love the most, that is providing you the most value as a consumer, is probably being driven by AI.
Hi, this is Andy North with Velocitize Talks. I'm here today with Mark Shewmaker, Executive Creative Director from Organic here in San Francisco.
Hi.
Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about your role at Organic. You're the Executive Creative Director. What are some of the cool things that you're working on at Organic?
What we do at Organic is, we work with very large companies to help them architect the interactions that bring consumers and their brands together.
Mm-hmm. What drew you into user experience and started you along this career path?
So when I started out in UX, it was a fairly young field. I mean, it already established itself in software development, but my career started on the web right at the beginning of the web. So whereas Organic's been around since 1993, the first commercial website I launched was in 1995. And frankly, we were doing UX based on the fact that someone had to do it. When I was building our original websites, we were putting together databases and we were putting together some media to pull that, to make all that work. But no one was thinking about how does it work for the user? They're still thinking about it from a technology perspective.
Given that a lot of the marketing is kind of on equal footing now, is UX the new branding? Is it the new way of differentiating itself? Companies differentiating themselves from other brands? Yeah,
well, I don't know if UX experience design is definitely the new branding, but I believe that now what your brand is sort of the aggregate experience that your consumers have with it. This is everything from what they see, what they read about you, how well your customer support works, how well your product works. I mean, that's a huge part of it now. In order to make that happen, to sort of find a way to bring value in all those different places that customers are looking for, you have to look at it from a very kind of UX perspective or an experience design perspective, which starts with the user. Which starts with the potential consumer, which thinks about what's important to these folks. Really, why are they even talking to us to begin with? And then you really want to look at their journey and craft how you talk to them, the kinds of things you make around that so you're delivering them value.
You've got a strong background in e-commerce when it comes to UX. I think that might confuse some folks, and when they say, well, what e-commerce is just you're clicking a button and buying something. How does UX apply to e-commerce?
Oh, it's an enormous part of e-commerce. If you've never worked in e-commerce, you'll know that there's a lot of technology involved. There's different e-commerce stacks, there's different product management stacks, and they take a lot of work and a lot of really smart people to bolt together. But at the end of the day, you are still replicating something that people have been doing for ages and ages and ages, shopping. So you have to then think about what people really want, design the experience so it'll feel like how they want to shop and what works best for the products they want to sell, but then also realize that every single button, every single thing you put on there has a cost to it. And what you're trying to do mostly is take costs away from the customer in that process, right? So all of your designs sort of, in a lot of ways, bring all that together.
How are you using data with some of your clients?
We're talking a lot about data. We work very closely with our strategists and our analytics folks to help the data just helps us understand who we're trying to provide value for, the audiences, right? The consumers. And I think what we do with that data is it helps us first understand the work we're doing now, sort of evaluate that work against the data, but it also sort of gives us a chance to then optimize later, right? As you'd expect, you find out. But what we do in this sort of loop is we create a bit of an agenda. So we make this big, long agenda of things that we want to learn in these experiments that we build, and then all of that is validated by data.
What are some of the common challenges that you see between some of those smaller and larger agencies, and what are some of the really cool things that are coming down the pipe for those?
With smaller agencies, I think the difference there is that the work tends to be more project-based, right? More specific. And I think in those cases, given with most agencies, often you deal on a smaller scale, and that often gives you opportunity to do really, really cool things. When you work with much larger agencies, you're also working with much larger companies, and with that, you are less focused on the immediate project. You're focused on the longer relationship, and you have to be dedicated to understanding your client's business.
So there's so many new technologies. There's something like 7,500 at last count for MarTech.
Yeah.
Are there any in particular, whether it's AI or what have you, that you're excited about that you're applying on a daily?
No question.
What would they be?
We have gone all in on AI. All in. We've gone so far into AI that we've actually created a part of our company called Synthetic. That our whole purpose is to really go deep and understand AI and incubate AI capabilities, AI thinking, AI strategies for our clients, because we think it will have so much impact on their businesses moving forward. And I think in this process, what we are learning is not just sort of how to do it, but how to teach our clients how to do it too. Right. So we do workshops with them. We help them sort of prepare for AI and help them understand, how is AI going to affect your marketing that you're doing now? How is it going to affect the product design that you're doing later? And get them to start having those conversations, because we think it'll have an enormous amount of impact, and it's now the time, to get ready for it and start prepping for it. And so by just jumping in there, by being there, by figuring out it was valuable and learning from it, that sort of was the birth of us getting deeper and deeper into AI and deeper into what we call kind of cognitive technologies.
Right.
And realizing that, synthetic might be the organic of the future.
Do you see AI, it's obviously useful on the back end, but I think in the UX side, it's got to have a ton of application, because it can almost interpret how someone is perhaps clicking through, or yes, they bought this. Obviously, Amazon has algorithms, but I think AI is kicking it up a notch. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I'd say if you look at your phone, I'd say the first 9 little icons are probably just wrappers for AI at this point. The stuff you love the most, that is providing you the most value as a consumer, is probably being driven by AI. And so we think that that's going to change, customer expectations about what they really find valuable. And I think that we have to start learning from, AI, and learning how to design it well to make sure that we can kind of do that in the future. And I think still the fact that you're there, your brand is there, that's a lot to people. You still get the attribution from that, because imagine being in that situation, with someone else, and they didn't have such a smooth experience. You actually had to stop and take a moment to figure it out. That's going to feel a whole lot worse when you've been through it once with someone that's really sort of nailed, the UX and the AI on it.
I could talk forever about that one.
Yeah.
But I wanted to jump to sort of the human element.
Sure.
UX bridges the two. It bridges technology with the human intuitive way that we go about things. Do you see that human element continuing even with the continuation of AI, and how will that affect AI?
Well, I think what will happen is everything will become connected at some point, right? Everything that we interact with will be distributed through a network, or has some connectivity through a network, right? Each of these things will be learning lots of stuff about us. And at some point, we're going to have to tune that, essentially. We're going to have to, it's almost like, you've got a light switch on your wall. You've got a dimmer. You're going to turn the lights up or down. You're going to figure out I need a little less AI in my world today, because AI is just doing too good a job, and I want to be human again. Right. So I think we're already sort of seeing some of that. I think that people love the value it brings, but there's a point when they start putting their hands up a little bit and saying, maybe I need to kind of come back. It's not only we provide value, but we learned about people. It creates this loop of us learning more about them, and then making things that just again make them happier, take friction out of their lives. I think it's a lot of great story about technology. I just think it needs a little bit of oversight to make sure it doesn't go too far, and a little more control over humans to be able to kind of keep it at bay if they need to.
Are there any cool projects that you're either working on right now or wish you were working on?
I think what the data is telling us in some situations is starting to point to very human insights that can help people a lot. I think that's what's really kind of driving me right now is for example, imagine you were a large financial services company, and then the data was pointing to, hey, people, if people talked more about money, they would just manage their finances better. But there's something very human about, starting a conversation between, somebody and their spouse. It's people don't like to talk about money, right? So if there are ways that we can, create tools or content that can sort of help get people to do that, and they start to see changes in their lives and just improvements because we found the thing, and we use the technology to get them over the hump a little bit,
right.
And that changes the behavior and just provides some value to their life. Like, that's exciting to me.
So you've had so much experience with all of these different types of technologies, and yet some of the technology are still somewhat the same, like websites. What do you think the website of the future will look like?
So I think that we have to kind of separate the World Wide Web from the internet at large, I think. Because I think they're very different things. AI is going to power network distributed experiences to everything around you. So the idea of getting information from the web, I think information will be distributed everywhere. And so
Seamless.
You won't need to have that centralized place to go. Right? But I think what's really important about the web and sort of websites in general is they create the barrier to entry for anybody on this planet to get out and send a message to the rest of the planet. The web is still the best thing to do that with.
So this is a question we always ask our guests. Is there a favorite book or podcast that you've read or are reading or listening to that you'd like to share with our viewers?
How Music Works by David Byrne. So you know who David Byrne is, right?
Yeah,
The musician of Talking Heads. He's also an author, an artist. He took just the whole notion of music and very sort of intellectually broke it down to its most atomic level. And almost like an engineer said, this is how music works. And here's how you make music. And this is why it sounds a certain way.
Mark, thank you so much. My guest today has been Mark Shewmaker, Executive Creative Director at Organic in San Francisco. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.